My name is Maher. I'm an artist and I'm a member of the board of the Linenhall Art Centre. I live in a small rural parish called Cluny, which is about 10, 14 miles from here, going south, where I have my own studio. I live with my husband Dermot. He's an artist too. We moved here, I would say, about 13 years ago now, maybe 12, 13 years ago. Dermot always came to visit the exhibitions in the Linenhall, and he had an exhibition, a solo exhibition here himself, so I was very much, I was aware of the Linenhall, and I met Marie Farrell, and she invited me to come on the board, but I was a bit hesitant, in the beginning, because I suppose my connections and my work in that sense were still in Dublin, I was still connected to my community there, as it were, But bit by bit, as I attended things that happened here and as I, met artists who worked here, I began to understand what a huge part the art centre, the Linenhall Art Centre in particular, plays in the life of the artistic community, in this part of the world. So then I went on to the board, and I was also on the Visual Arts Committee, which is the arts committee which decides which, what shows, selects shows. So that was really fun, actually. That was great, and I met great people through that as well on that selection committee. I would come to exhibitions here, and I came to readings here, heard like amazing writers speaking here, like Sally Rooney and Colin Barrett, Mike McCormack, Ger Reedy, all these amazing writers. And really, probably the first person I met actually when I came in here was Maura Connolly. And, don't underestimate, what the face of an art centre is, the face that you meet, the person that you meet, the first person that you meet. It's really important that art centres are welcoming places and that people feel that they own it, that's our art centre, it belongs to us and we're welcome there. And that's what it felt like always when you came in here. Probably the first artist I met when I came to Mayo was Breda Burns. And Breda was a friend of Dermot's. They had been friends for years, and then we're friends independently. And I also met Ian Wieczorek, whom, interestingly, I knew as a writer and kind of publisher. And so I was very interested to get to know him then as a visual artist in time. And bit by bit, then I started to meet people. Gaynor Seville, who was the amazing public arts officer for Mayo, actually came to visit us in the studio very soon after we arrived to welcome us. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. Like somebody just come to say, welcome to Mayo, and if there's anything at all, we can do to help you or introduce you, or, so that was really great. And I became involved with many projects that she initiated. So she was a real important person, for me to meet as well. And I became a mentor on one of her projects, which was called Find. And she was always doing these interesting projects that weren't conventional, they were kind of anti-conventional in that she would try to cite artwork around the town, for instance, or she'd try to cite artwork on the Greenway, and she did a few amazing projects, one on the Greenway, but then this one, Find, which I was a mentor on, along with Aideen Barry. And I think that's where I met Aideen Barry, and consequently, we did a show together last year in Washington, DC, Aideen Barry and I. So, yeah, and that was really marvelous, Find, because I met all these great young artists who were either from here or working out of here, like Nuala Clark, who had come back from New York, a great painter. Alice Dixon, who lives and works in Ballina. Who else did I meet? I met Ian, of course, which I knew him already. Ian Wieczorek. Joanne Hopkins. Wow. So she also came onto the Visual Arts Committee then after that, so she's continuing her relationship with the Linenhall. And Amanda Rice, yes, she did that wonderful tug-of-war on the Mall, and she went on, I think, then to go to college in London, and I think she lives there. She lives there now. Conor O'Grady, was he? I don't think he was in Find. I met him though through a show, actually a wonderful show that he did here in the Linenhall. So, like, I've met a marvelous kind of coterie of young artists, you know, who are involved in making art in this county. And there are artists who are already here that I got to meet as well, like Deirdre Walsh, who's a neighbour of mine, and Chris Doris, who lives more or less in North Mayo. When we came here first, he was on a residency on the top of Croagh-Patrick, where he did 40 days and 40 nights in a tent. And myself and Dermot climbed up to see him on his residency there. Yeah, that's how I met him. So, like, there's so many interesting things, you know, going on here. So, bit by bit, then I suppose, you know, I became involved myself in knowing, you know, all of those people. Like, mentorship is a thing that I'm really interested in and really like doing. I'm not really a great teacher per se, you know, like, and imparting knowledge or anything, but mentorship is something I'm really interested in. And through mentoring, I met some really marvelous younger artists as well, like Katie Moore, for instance, who did that great show in Ballina, and Anya O'Hara, who, you know, I saw a performance that she did in Dublin, and so it continued my friendship with her. So I suppose what I realized really about Mayo is that there's a really diverse group of artists who are all working individually, but then they seem to have a kind of community working as well, where they all kind of help each other. And that has been really a great thing to learn, you know. And setting up the residency here in the Linenhall has been a great thing as well. And the Bolé residency, as it's called now, which is brilliant, called after Veronica Bolé, who's another artist that I met when I came to Mayo, who sadly passed away, but was on the board of the Linenhall also, and that's why the residency is called, you know, named in honour of her. The board had always, in their mind, we always had in our mind that we would have some kind of residency, you know, attached to the Linenhall, but we thought probably that it would be a writer's residency, you know, because of not having space really. But now, because of pandemic and, you know, things that have happened in that way, space has become available, you know. So the one art that can move into that space is visual art. Like the performance, the musicians, they can't do it, you know, for the moment. But, you know, visual art can proceed. And I'd have to say that the new director here, you know, Bernadette Greenon, she moved really quickly to make that happen, to make that residency happen. She found a few bob, you know, to pay the fee and to pay for the materials, and got it going as quick as she could. And I mean, I think it's a great example of how, a great model really, of how people can adapt. The space can be adapted. And the one thing that really is adaptable is visual art, you know. So we're sitting here in this, another great show, like we just closed a great show of Rajinder Singh. And now we have this show opening, which is Brita Mayer, another artist that I actually met Brita before I came to Mayo, but she's done this amazing project here with Traveller Women on the subject of kind of hair, identity and ethnicity. And that's the next show opening here. I suppose for me, you know, for me myself, I find great courage, you know, knowing that this kind of community exists, you know, around me. And what's the saying nowadays? Together apart, isn't that what we are? You know what I mean, for COVID. But like artists, visual artists have always been like that, haven't we? You know, we've been apart doing our work, but together kind of as a community. And that seems to really work here. And in this time in particular, you know, during this pandemic, it gives me great courage to think that all those people are working individually and devoted, you know, to what they do. And we're all still working, and we will continue to do so. It's remarkable, really, how many of the people that you interviewed said that their first encounter with culture was at the Linenhall Art Centre. That was really remarkable to me, and that even as children they came here for the wonderful, you know, children's program, or now that they bring their own children here to see exhibitions and to work here. I remember hearing Emer McBride, you know, the writer, saying that the Linenhall was the first place where she encountered culture. So if you haven't got an art centre, you won't be able to encounter that. So that's how important they are. If I could make a plea, you know, a direct plea to government or to the Minister for Culture or the Arts Council or anybody who's listening, to please pay attention to the art centres of this country, dotted around this country. They are the organs, the vital organs of the body of culture. And if they're not fed, the culture will not survive. And the artists, like those artists that I mentioned, they are the lifeblood of those organs. And if they can't make their work, and if they can't live and they haven't got space to do that, those organs will not survive. So please pay attention to your local arts centre, attend it as often as you can, and be a supporter of your local art centres.